No, I have no doubt of that. I would call it an apparent attack. I think there's probably an infinitesimal chance it isn't, but it certainly doesn't appear that it could be. Commercial airliners, number one, are not going to direct themselves into a square hit on the World Trade Center. If there's some sort of a mayday or something wrong with the plane, they're going to try to ditch it elsewhere. They're not going to do that. And if the reports of a second plane hitting the building are true, then I think that probably caps off exactly what this is. It's a cowardly act of terrorism.
How restricted is the airspace around the World Trade Center?
I'm not an FAA person, but
no,
you cannot fly through that airspace unless you're a helicopter, or unless you're anything really, without being guided by air traffic control. It's highly restrictive.
So the possibility that two planes on a clear day just happened to wander into these buildings.
I think that's beyond the pale.
Yeah, that's not a possibility. Again, you worked on evacuating these buildings. You saw what happened when they were evacuated. How many people are we talking about from what you can see on those upper levels?
Do we know exactly what time this first event happened?
We're guessing. We're putting it at about 8:45, Mr. Kallstrom.
Yeah,
again, that's only by eyewitnesses.
Yeah, Brian, I think we're talking literally hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of people affected by this. I mean, the smoke alone in the other floors, and the when you compare the bombing in the basement of that building, which for a number of hours we weren't sure it was a bomb. We thought maybe it was some sort of a transformer blowing up, to what's reported at least as a 737 type size airplane, something that size, hitting the first tower, and then some smaller plane hitting the second. I mean, this is geometrically more catastrophic.
Difficult building to extraordinary, obviously, because of the height of the buildings, but the plans in place for evacuation, are they, from your experience, state of the art?
I think they are. I think the whole security of that building, both from a physical security standpoint and from an evacuation standpoint, was certainly reinvented and looked after after that tragedy that happened back in the early 90s. And they're probably as good as they can be. But having said that, you're talking about one of the tallest structures, or two of the tallest structures in the United States. And whether or not the elevators are working, they're probably not. They're not used in case of fire. You've got a massive evacuation problem on your hands.
Would it be highly unusual, Mr. Kallstrom, for these attacks, if that's what they were, to have taken place without some degree of advance warning?
Well, I don't know the answer to that. Obviously, the FBI and law enforcement, the people that come to work every day and suffer through immense criticism when little things go wrong, these are the days that everyone hopes that they have a very formidable, highly motivated FBI and law enforcement team. And I suspect we do. And these are the things that they try to not have happen. These are the things they try to have the intelligence to avoid happening. International terrorism, if that is what this is, and I don't know what it is very hard to penetrate, because it's not very, it doesn't have a hierarchy of authority, and it's cellular, and it's a lot of different people motivated for religious type reasons, hatred reasons, and you can necessarily not know a lot about what's going on in an agency if you're in at some level, because it's so segmented. Again,
I'm getting a report now that it was a United Airlines plane that plowed into the building. We don't know whether that negates the American Airlines reported hijacking, or whether or not that was a second plane. So at this point, we're getting different reports. Go ahead, Mr. Kallstrom.
Yeah, I mean, you telling me that, Brian, if that is a commercial airline, a United or American or whatever it is, I mean, my initial thought there is that this plane was somehow commandeered by somebody, hijacked, taken over, and flown into the building. I don't know that for a fact, but that's certainly what it looks like.
Yeah, as I'm looking at the second tape right here, and I don't know if you're watching on the line with us, that is definitely a commercial-sized aircraft.
Yeah.
Now that we've blown it up.
Yeah.
In size.
It's beyond belief, but it's not beyond belief. I mean, we've seen this hatred find its way into the embassy bombings in Africa. We've seen this hatred at the USS Cole. We've seen it at the World Trade Center in '93. We've seen it around the world in acts that take place almost every day. And, for this to then transform itself into this size of an incredible tragedy, to me, although I certainly would never expect it, never ever want it to happen, is not that unbelievable.
Yeah, James Kallstrom, let me ask you to sit tight for a second, if you would. Brian Jenkins, a terrorism expert who's been with us quite a few times, as I understand, on the line. Brian, you there?
Yes, I am.
Talk to me.
Well, obviously, you know, we don't know the details of what happened yet. We should have details coming out fairly quickly, though, as to the identity of this aircraft. We're talking about crowded airspace in New York with major airports in the area, both in the immediate area of New York and in the surrounding cities. There should be information fairly quickly that will identify these particular aircraft. And indeed, we should be able to confirm fairly quickly as to the identity of the jet, and perhaps even some last second broadcast that may indicate what happened.
Mr. Jenkins, I'm going to interrupt for just one
Sure.
second because we're getting word that they are evacuating the White House down in Washington right now.
Well, this is not surprising. I mean, first of all, an action of this magnitude is something that does suggest a great deal of planning and preparation. In some of these recent actions, we have seen multiple coordinated operations.
But who's capable of this kind of planning and preparation?
There are a number of terrorist organizations around the world that would be capable of this, based primarily in the Middle East. But it's too early, really, to speculate as to the identity. Certainly,
But there any doubt in your mind that what we're looking at here is the aftermath of a coordinated terrorist incident?
You know, to explain. In any as happenstance.
Hold it, Mr. Jenkins. We're looking. There are two jets right now approaching the World Trade Center. Oh. We're watching. Hold on. I'm sorry. No, the one aircraft is cleared. We can't tell whether it was a plane or a chopper from our vantage point. I apologize, Mr. Jenkins.
No, that's okay.
We're more than a bit gun shy. We're seeing aircraft off to the right side of our picture. We're going to assume at this point that is a copter or is aircraft to get a better vantage point. But having seen one go plow in for a second time, we're a little bit wary. Go ahead. I apologize.
We are breaking into the special live coverage of what's happening at the World Trade Center in New York to tell you about something going on right here at the Pentagon. You are looking at both pictures. The smoke that you see on the left-hand side of your screen is right here in the Washington area at the Pentagon.
Looks like the helipad area of the Pentagon over towards 395. There were reports of an explosion. People said the building shook. They felt the building
shake, and they're evacuating that building. We're also getting word that the White House may be under an evacuation order right now. Again, we don't know exactly what happened here at the Pentagon, but you can see the result of whatever it was near the area of the heliport is lots of billowing smoke, dark smoke, and workers reported hearing something and then feeling the area rumble.
What do you hear, Tom? There is construction work going on there.
We don't know what is the cause of this smoke, but we are keeping you updated on this story, and of course the breaking story in New York where one of two planes we're now hearing that crashed into the World Trade Center was hijacked after takeoff from Boston.
On the left.
On the left is the Pentagon. And on the right is the World Trade Center, where reports now from AP say that one of the two planes that crashed into the World Trade Center towers was hijacked after takeoff.
President Bush has called the World Trade Center explosions apparent terrorist attacks. Again, on the left of your screen.
Now we're hearing that the Associated Press is quoting witnesses as saying it was an aircraft that crashed into the Pentagon. And that is what we're looking at right now from Arlington, Virginia. Our Gannett cam looking at this huge, billowing, dark smoke. A plane.
So we got two
according to
planes that
witnesses.
plowed into the World Trade Center up in New York. Now we've got a plane that plowed into the Pentagon here in Arlington. Stay with us. We're going to get you more information just as soon as we can. Apparently, the Pentagon being evacuated.
There are reports that the White House may be under an evacuation order as well. The West Wing of the White House has been evacuated, according to AP, amid terrorist threats. That's the AP News alert just moved across the wires.
The Pentagon, this is a live shot from the Gannett camera atop the Gannett building in Roslyn of the Pentagon. You can't see the Pentagon through all the smoke.
And again, just word that the West Wing of the White House has been evacuated amid terrorist threats.
Possibility. Again, you worked on evacuating these buildings. You saw what happened when they were evacuated. How many people are we talking about from what you can see on those upper levels?
Do we know exactly what time this first event happened?
We're guessing.
No, I have no doubt of that. I would call it an apparent attack. I think there's probably an infinitesimal chance it isn't, but it certainly doesn't appear that it could be. Commercial airliners, number one, are not going to direct themselves into a square hit on the World Trade Center. If there's some sort of a mayday or something wrong with the plane.
Putting it at about 8:45, Mr. Kallstrom.
Yeah,
again, that's only by eyewitnesses.
Yeah, Brian, I think we're talking literally hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of people affected by this. I mean, the smoke alone in the other floors and the... when you compare the bombing in the basement of that building, which for a number of hours, you cannot fly through that airspace unless you're a helicopter, or unless you're anything really, without being guided by air traffic control. It's highly restrictive.
So the possibility that two planes on a clear day just happened to wander into these buildings.
I think that's beyond the pale.
Yeah, that's not a possibility.
They're going to try to ditch it elsewhere. They're not going to do that. And if the reports of a second plane hitting the building are true, then I think that probably caps off exactly what this is. It's a cowardly act of terrorism.
How restricted is the airspace around the World Trade Center?
I'm not an FAA person, but I mean, you can't.